Hey, I want to talk to you about the antitrust suit that the federal government is bringing up against Google. This is a mild departure from the channel's goal, I think, which is to teach people Google Ads and how to use the Google ecosystem. But I think it's an important thing for us to address because it's going to impact advertisers and small business owners, no matter what happens. Just a couple of personal notes, if y'all don't mind, because I think it's helpful for you to understand the paradigm through which I view all of this, kind of the way that I approach it and my personal opinions, because they're going to taint, you might say, some of my opinions and some of the information that I provide you. I actually think that this is, I think this is an error. It's obvious that Google has a monopoly. That's clear. I think some of the accusations, and if you read more of the documentation as far as the suit that's actually being leveled, some of the accusations, and accusation might be the wrong word, I'm not an attorney, but some of what the government is saying about how Google has held this quote unquote illegal monopoly are patently absurd because, they point specifically to Google's exclusive agreement with Apple as a search engine. The problem with that is Google is the only option as a search engine. There is not a viable plan B. Bing is an abysmal wreck, as everybody knows. It doesn't yield results. Google as a search engine is currently the only search engine that functions properly. It's a meritocratic environment where Google has landed not just in position 1, but position 1 through 500,000. I hear people bring up DuckDuckGo often, which is it's a great tool, but you would excuse Apple for not wanting to use something that doesn't allow it to track anything, because that's actually contrary to what other systems would need in order to integrate with. It's almost like saying that the wheel has a monopoly on cars. At the moment, it's just the ubiquitous truth because it's the only thing that currently functions. So let that stand alone for a moment. The other issue that we're going to run into is the fact that I don't believe that, if you look at the triopoly, really, which is Google, Amazon, and Facebook, it's interesting to me that they chose Google first because Google, I think, has done the best job of not showing its cards. Google has far more data than Facebook does on an exponential scale. It has a much broader reach. It's better ingrained. It's sort of permeated every facet of our life. And yet Facebook had the Cambridge Analytical scandal. Facebook had allowed way more in the way of interest-based segmentation and targeting. Facebook has had the privacy issues and concerns. The election meddling happened through Facebook. And I'm not sitting here saying like, oh, why isn't the government going after Facebook? But what I am saying is it's just interesting to me that the government has chosen the network that of the available options appears to have conducted themselves with the most, comparatively speaking, the most responsibility. And I also believe that there's actually, I'm sure, something political to that. The thing that pisses me off is you have these geriatric morons in the government, and I'm not even speaking to their physical age. I just mean like mentally. These are people that don't understand and don't want to understand the way that the internet works, and they're trying to govern it. And they don't care if something's a monopoly because we have a limitless number of monopolies in this country. I'll point specifically to the banking system and the news. I think we have, with 3 to 5 organizations own every single news outlet basically in existence. So they don't care that there's a monopoly. What bothers them, in my view, and hopefully this doesn't sound too conspiracy theory-esque, but they don't like monopolies that they don't control. And so now here comes the government, which is maybe the thing that works the worst in our country, and it's going to go fix the thing that works the best in our country. So on a personal level, I find myself to be offended. And obviously I drank the Kool-Aid. I'm a Google Ads manager, and I'm not on Google's side per se. I'm shooting a course right now called You versus Google. I don't think that Google is this great magnanimous entity that has all of our best interests at heart. It's a money-making institution, and it does need to be held in check. But the way that we now, the American people, since it's us that's filing the suit, the way that we're going about it is it's incorrect. First and foremost, I think the federal government stands zero chance of making any substantive difference, really. This is more than anything else, I feel. It's a feather in the cap from an election perspective, just so that, somebody can step up and say, oh, look at the stance that we took. And it was done too soon. If they actually wanted to make an impact, there was a better case to be built than has been built. I think they're going up against the wrong network. I think Facebook should be first on the chopping block. And not to say that anybody should kill Facebook, just to say that if there is a network that needs to be reined in, Facebook is the very clear aggressor. In a world where privacy hasn't been protected, information has been allowed to leak. You have all those weird sort of third-party apps where Facebook was knowingly allowing people tangential information, friends of friends information, just by virtue of you like playing a game or filling out one of those surveys. So clearly there's a political purpose behind the sequence. And that's as much as I'll say on that, because everything past it is speculative, but it's not unfair to say that you have a clear aggressor that's not being, placed first in line. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe the government wants to shoot a couple bullets first just to see how it goes, knowing it's going to lose against Google because it's building a case against Facebook. That could be it. What do I know? That said, from an advertising perspective, it's interesting because Google does have a virtual monopoly on search specifically. Between the actual Google search engine and then YouTube, Google owns the entire search space. You could say that Google has a monopoly, or something resembling a monopoly inside of the display advertising ecosystem. Google reaches 90% of the internet users on the planet, and 65% of those reached on a daily basis. I don't think you could accuse Google of price fixing yet, but they're getting there. There are facets that Google has shared with us as to how ad rank is calculated, that begins to kind of stink of some level of price fixing, but it's within their own ecosystem. It's self-contained. It's not as though they're collaborating with other entities, which I think is what would be necessary in order for that case to really be made. I think that if the government actually succeeds in breaking up some sections or facets of Google, which I find wildly unlikely, it could serve to benefit advertisers because of the competitive market that it would create between whatever entities that it broke up. If we now have two views basically, and you're splitting the inventory, the available inventory, instead of two separate dashboards. What's nice about that is there's a commoditization of the traffic that will reset in a way. And I would anticipate us having 12 to 18 months worth of really interesting ramp, just to go out and begin to kind of figure out, depending on how they split it up, which networks are applicable for which demographics, and how to work the system, and where the margin is, where the profitability is. So it's interesting because as an agency, that would be really good for me. It would be really good for me because it would throw everything into turmoil, and everything that everybody has figured out. All of your conversion optimized landing pages, all of your campaigns, all of your current cost per click, all of your competitive analysis, all of it will go out the window instantly. Your campaigns will become far less efficient. So if you're just an advertiser, if you're not an agency, this sucks for you. It's a reset button. It's great for me because now you have to pay me to figure this out again. And I'm not telling you that I'm rooting for this, because I'm not. Every one of my clients basically just goes right back to zero. I don't see that happening. Google's a $1 trillion company. They're worth $1 trillion. And they have people that are way smarter than the people working for the government, which is just funny to say. Because of course that's true. And the imbeciles that are going after them now don't even know how to properly articulate the problem. They don't understand the mechanism that it is that they're dealing with. And, it's that old Reagan quote, the scariest words in the English language are, I'm here for the government and I'm here to help, or whatever. So as an advertiser, I would pay very close attention to this, because if they get too aggressively bullish and they actually start to win, there's a very healthy reset coming. And there will be some races to the top and some races to the bottom too, as with anything else. What I'm interested in seeing is what pace this sets ongoing, because we have extremely efficient systems that have gobbled up market share in Google, Amazon, Facebook, and we're about to set the pace in a way that is maybe going to dictate all of our futures for the next 100 years potentially. How we treat these organizations and the level of control that we allow them to assert and the amount of market share we allow them to capture. It'll be interesting to see, what rules are created. I remember reading that when they broke up Alexander Graham Bell's company, all they did was make him stronger. And it's not like the government can come in and take things away from Google. All they're going to do is separate it into entities that Alphabet still owns and controls. And so it just, it begs the question in so doing, are they going to create a beast that's actually more difficult for them to control, because now it's harder to identify, the unified facet of it? Or do they just have one of those weird sock puppet scenarios where it's like, hey, you got to go give Bing more market share? Which is funny because both Bing and Google participate in the same lie. Bing and Google both will say that Bing has 30% market share, which isn't true. Bing has 30% market share per capita, maybe. Google has 99% market share by search. People that search use Google. And all the searches taking place are happening inside the Google ecosystem. And it's frustrating that you have this thing that works so well. You think about what it is that Google has done. They've taken the collective knowledge of humanity and they've cataloged it in a way that it's all readily accessible. And they've done it well. It's in as much as it can be, it's meritocratic. Obviously they have some read things like scholarly articles and some attempt at filtering out poor sources of information. But I think all in all, Google's done a really good job. And I think that it's disappointing to see that they're the first at bat, especially given the congressional hearings with Zuckerberg and how poorly he fared there. So it'll be interesting to see. As an advertiser, I'd recommend you watch really closely and get ready to pivot, because that might end up being necessary. Would love to hear your thoughts on this topic. It's one I'm passionate about, as you can tell. So hit me in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, as always. And thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.